Hello guys, Charles here and welcome back to my channel. So one of the things that self-improvement experts, someone such as Tony Robbins, talks about all the time, you'll see this on all the self-improvement YouTube channels, is this concept of modelling. And to really do it in justice, the idea of modelling is you take someone who you aspire to be like and you almost reverse engineer their decisions, and you try and copy their behaviours and imitate their lifestyle and all this sort of stuff. You've no doubt seen on YouTube like the millionaire's 5 a.m. morning routine and all this sort of stuff. So this concept led me to think in a little bit more detail about some of my own students. Now, I've been teaching for over a decade now, and I've worked in schools with choirs and ensembles and orchestras and private lessons at home, and I've dealt with a really wide range of students, some of which fizzled out with a whimper, not a bang, and others who have ended up doing really great things with their music, and I believe them to be really fantastic musicians. So one of the great things about working with such a diverse group of people across a range of instruments is it really gives me a good pool for this concept of modelling, looking at behaviours that some people tend to exhibit and the behaviours that others tend to exhibit, and deciding which of those behaviours I would quite like to incorporate into my own life. So teaching for me is a really two-way dialogue where, although I am technically the expert or the professional in the room, I'll very often get asked a particularly inquisitive question that tackles a topic from an angle I've never considered before. Or I'll see the way that a student tackles problems or a particular approach that they use or that they've learned from another teacher, and I'll find that quite inspiring and copy it myself. So for today's video, I really thought about the top 3 traits that I see across all of my more successful students, with the view to sharing them with you, and hopefully you can incorporate these and model these into your own lifestyle, and that might give you a little leg up with your music making. Now, the disclaimer here, of course, is everybody plays for different reasons. It's not a case that I have good students and bad students. Students play for all sorts of different reasons. For some people it's just a hobby, for some it's because they really want to take it professionally in the future. So it's not that, you know, the students who take it very seriously are the good ones and the students who take it less seriously are the bad ones. It's actually quite a bit more nuanced than that, and I'll see really fantastic traits in students who just play for fun, and some pretty poor traits actually in the students who are considering taking music more seriously. So if you are one of my students, I'm not going to name any names here, but it's completely up to you to decide which of those camps you fall into. And the final thing to say before we look at this list is that actually I think these 3 traits are applicable to any skill. This is not music specific. So if you are a student of anything, I think you really need to show these 3 traits, in my opinion, in order to be successful, or at least to see it through. So the first trait that I see in my most successful students is consistency. So we hear people talk a lot about discipline and determination and all these quite like extreme sounding words. But actually, the thing that the majority of my most successful students have got in common is that they've just stuck with it. You often find students fizzle out after the first couple of years. They get a few basic skills on the instrument and they feel that they're happy with that level. The students who stick with it, regularly playing pretty much every day, are the ones who, of course, accumulate those skills. It's a compounding effect, and over the years they suddenly find that their trajectory takes off and they go from being a pretty good player to an incredibly good player in a very short period of time. These students also manage to find the time to play even when they are genuinely busy. So because I work with a lot of kids at school, they've often got GCSE or A-level exams or whatever exams are called in your country, and they'll say, you know, I haven't really been able to practice much this week, and it turns out that they've still done half an hour a day or whatever, even though they had something genuinely more important to work on for that particular period of time. So that consistency and just picking up your instrument doesn't really matter what you're doing, but just making sure that you are staying familiar and acquainted with your instrument on an almost daily basis, wherever possible. The second admirable trait that I see in many of my students is curiosity and the ability to carve their own path. So like I said, it's not necessarily the best students are the ones who are taking music most seriously and the hobbyists are the worst students or anything like that. Very often I'll set a student a task for the week and they won't do it. You might think that therefore that is a bad student, but it depends on why they haven't done it. Now, if they come back and they say, well, I haven't really looked at that, but I have learned this entire song that I really wanted to learn, and they've been studious still and consistent, but working on something that, you know, carving their own path, something that they're interested in, then that's still great for me as a teacher, because I can now reframe whatever it was I was trying to do with them using this new song as a vehicle for learning that. And it changes my teaching methods, making sure that it's always engaging for them. However, on the flip side, if I ask a student to do something and they come back next week and they've done nothing, of course, that's a slightly different equation. I think as well, included in this category, this curiosity and carving your own path, is these players tend to go out of their way to play with other musicians. And so again, although they may not have found the time to do targeted specific practice of whatever I've asked them to do, they've still played with other musicians through the week, which is of course a hugely valuable learning tool. And the third positive characteristic of many of my students is sticking to the basics. Now, although, like I say, these students are curious and they're carving their own path and discovering new concepts, it's very easy, as we all know, to get bogged down in the specific techniques and the specific details of what the notes are, what the scales are, and all this stuff. I generally find that my more successful students, they know about all this stuff, but they appreciate the important and essential skills, and they focus most of their time on those things. By getting to know the basics completely inside out, back to front, upside down, really, really confidently, everything else just kind of stacks on top of that. That's your foundation. The issue, and this is certainly something where I was a bad student myself, is I would get distracted by all the exciting concepts, all these things that I heard people talking about, when really I still couldn't even play my major scale, for example. So within the realms of music, I personally believe that the three most important things to focus on would be melody, time, and your tone on your instrument, whichever instrument you play. If you can play a beautiful melody with really nice sense of time, whether you're playing loose or strict time, but that sense of feel and groove, and you play with a beautiful tone that people want to listen to, you'll always be an employable musician, and any extras, any fancy showy-offy stuff that you stack on top of that is just a bonus. So what do you think? What traits do you think make someone a brilliant student? There is an almost endless list of positive traits that I could have mentioned today. I was really trying to cut down to the bone, really get the fine details today. But I'd really be interested to hear your thoughts. I know this is slightly different from my usual format of video, but like I say, it was just something, a YouTube video in fact, got my mind thinking about this. And I really, really appreciate the input of my students on my own studies, as well as the other way around. So if you are a teacher, I'm sure you appreciate that dynamic yourself. If you're someone who's maybe thinking about getting into teaching, I would massively recommend it. That's maybe a video I'll do on another occasion. It's not just for people who can't play and all those things we say about teachers. There's a real two-way relationship there, and I assure you, you will get a huge amount of value out of focusing in on specific, simple topics and trying to explain them in the clearest way possible to your students. Please do give this video a like, subscribe, remember to ding the notification bell, or you might as well not be subscribed, and share this with any of your friends who you think could benefit from these character traits. And as always, I hope you're all doing very well, getting plenty of practice in, and I very much look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers!
Roll up, let me embed a story you'll never forget. A drip, drip, but drowning in debt now. You can't buy your way out, and I heard you find it difficult to cope. Well, here by this bottle full of hope.